at the time. But for people who grew up in complete silence in the classroom, this question means nothing. Something that people take for granted. Yeah. Why are you here, for example? You don't know why you are here. You're born here in this country. You cannot choose your birthday. You cannot be born in California. Yeah. There's no why. It's just a fact. So I'm silent because I'm silent. It's a natural part of my life. Why do you ask? So I failed. And I realized that a question is only meaningful when they see two sides of the same coin. Like, why are you talking? I'm talking because there are moments I'm silent and I know why I'm silent. So I understand why I talk. Like I said yesterday, I gave an example of being afraid of ghosts. When I was a child, people asked me, are you afraid of ghosts? I said, I don't know. But one day I knew the answer. One day I passed by a cemetery late at night and I felt fear. And I started to explain for myself, yes, I'm very afraid of ghosts. Why? Because the first time in my life I started to be aware. I became afraid because I felt the need to be surrounded by humans. The lack of human reminds me that ghost is threatening. Yes. When you see two sides of the same picture, you understand one or you understand the other. So I decided to look for Japanese students who actually have been overseas, exposed to talk, and some of them have changed their behavior. I asked those people and I identified 10 Japanese students across different universities in Australia and interviewed them and wrote my fourth report about silence. It was Japanese perspective on silence. And I will show you some of the major findings now. They said every individual has a dual responsibility, not only towards her own learning, but also toward the learning of their community, in the sense that if I'm not talking all the time, I'm giving space for my peers to talk. So we share space. If I keep talking, that is taking away my friends' opportunity for learning. Yeah. And then there are a few other things. Talk heard. Remember just now, John and you and me, we said silent heard, right? When people stop talking with you. But Japanese said talk heard. When they are not sure what to do, they keep silent. They feel silent is more safe for them. Silent is safety. Listening is also about making connection. They think when someone is talking to them, they are listening and express the responses. Non-verbally, it's connecting. Like you maintain eye contact, you nod, you show interest, you lean forward. That's also a kind of connection. Silence also allows an internal dialogue. Just now we mentioned self-talk, inner talk, and rapid talk or speech. Yeah, they do a lot of internal dialogue inside, and they're learning through this. So that was some of the major findings. That article, I think you can find. It was called, I forgot what it's called, but related to Japanese silence. I published it in the European Journal, yeah, of TEFL and Applied Linguistics. If you want to read some of these articles, you go to academia.edu, academia.edu, and then you type that bar. I put up there maybe at least a dozen articles for free, at least maybe one of them. Yeah. My next trip was in Wuhan city in China. I repeat this research project exactly as it was, but on a different route. I conducted a survey on 120 universities. Wuhan is a city that has the second largest number of universities in China after Beijing. And then I continue to interview Chinese students who have been exposed to Western academic culture, so they understand the meaning of yes, John. Yes.
I see you going from culture.
Yes.
I'm assuming that your first surveys, your first interviews are in English.
Yes.
Are you using a back translation method? I mean, what are you using to do these countries.
Right. I had a translator. I don't know how it may or may not match with part of the conversation, but to create comfort, I not often come with a translator who create an open climate for them to share views. Yeah, what do you think? Yeah.
No, I'm
Yeah,
curious, because I do surveys across different cultures
Yes,
too. And
exactly. Did you do it bilingually or that was what
I've
you
done
did?
a back translation method where
Yes.
you take it and you take it back. I found
Exactly.
that to be successful. I've had a
Translation.
translator along with me.
I agree.
We had to translate.
Yes.
We had to type everything up, code it, translate it,
Exactly.
and then do the debate method.
Yes.
I'm sorry to
Something may be lost. Yeah, I was self-guarded against that as well. I thought, yeah, what if something is lost by translation? So the person who was with me as a translator was not just verbal word, but they are a digital person.
Okay, so you had somebody in the field.
So they know, yeah. And then we had it bilingually. Yeah, every piece of survey questionnaire and the question were printed into languages. And we said yes, of course. Participants were allowed to use any language they so wish, and the person with me would help me.
When you're publishing and you're adding your surveys into your articles,
Yes.
are you adding the local language component as well, or are you just doing that?
The reference is written in both the English translation and local language. But I think you also talk about the transcription.
Right, yeah.
Transcription is in both. Yeah, we did audio tape and it took tremendous amount of 4 years. Yeah,
That's a long time.
Yeah, 4 years. So they documented from recording,
Right.
and then they translate, and we had to do a lot of coding, theme collation and stuff like that. Yeah, it took a long time, but I understand what John is asking.
Sorry for the question.
It's okay. It's a very important aspect of research, which is good for us to pay attention when we do research across language and culture, linguistic, cultural barrier. There should be measures to cope with the potential missing data. Yeah. So Chinese students feel totally different. I'm going to share with you. Yeah. I thought I could spend the rest of my life going around the world and doing this, and the results always different. Why am I doing this? Where's the solution? Where's the common answer? There's no common answer. Yeah. So some of them told me a story and many stories about how they learn in talk and silent, but this is the best story, yeah, related to a novel. I will tell you the story first, and then I'll explain why this story is connected to Chinese silence. So once upon a time, there was a flea trapped in a bottle. Every day, the flea tried to jump out of the bottle, but it couldn't because there was a lid on top. And the flea tried this for a long time until it got very tired and slowly giving up the intention of escape. Yeah. And then one day, the lid was removed. The flea continued to stay. Have you been in a similar situation? You were not allowed to do something. Yeah, Miss Phương, maybe you have a story.
Just the same feelings.
The same feeling. You're not allowed to do something, and you're struggling.
Yeah.
And you're tired. One day you are allowed. You don't want anymore. Like when I was a child, one of my passions was climbing. Like climbing rock, climbing hill, climbing tree. I love climbing. My father was always angry, me and my brother. We put ourselves in danger. Sometimes the tree very high, and we try to compete. Me and my brother try to go up until one of us reached the highest point to be the winner. And that was a dangerous game, but we were so excited about it. One day, my father brought us down and really whacked us really hard to say, no more in your life. And we stopped, but we're upset. We're like, every time we look at the tree, it's forever a dream. Conquering heights can never do it. And father passed away when we grew up. Father passed away. And one day, my brother and I look at a tree. One day, we are old now. We don't want to climb anymore. Now no one forbid us from climbing.
Because of your old age.
Yeah, no. Thank you very much. It's true, it's true.
You're never ready.
Yes, I so sometimes we grow up and the person inside us die. The innocence, the curiosity, the artist, the poet, the love, the passion, lots of things die. Yeah? So it's the same as this story. Yeah? The flea stay. The bottle is open because the cap or the lid is now in the flea's heart. Very sad. Why am I sharing this story with you? I will go back to that in a minute, but these are the key findings. There was a gap, and I think this might apply to our context as well. There's a gap in expectation in high school and university. In high school, you and I have been trained. Maybe John was different, but you and I, Dr. Singh, Dr. Phương, yeah, were trained to be silent in high school. Yeah. And then when we went to university, lecturer said, "Come on, speak." But we are like, "It's alright, don't worry, it's alright." So there was a gap in expectation, the opposite, yeah. And we don't want to respond anymore. I'll let you read that. Yep. Somehow we wish in high school we had more opportunity to debate, to learn debate. But that was too late, like Ms. Phương said. You are getting mature. I wouldn't say all, but more mature, yeah. So the trouble is, even if we know that expectation has altered, we continue to respond to the earlier expectation. There was no way to revolutionize our behavior anymore. The flea is actually a student. The bottle is silence. We were trapped in high school in silence. The lid is expectation to work quiet obedience. That was in high school. And one day when we went to university, that expectation was gone. But we continue to stay silent. Why? Because the reluctance to break silence has been with us for so long. Yeah. That was one of the best stories I collect from data. And that was the best finding, yeah. My next trip was, my next research project was in Korea, when I did similar thing. But the survey was not as interesting. I had survey with, they have a quality, so. But most interestingly, interview with people who have been in a Western university. Silence can be a form of resistance. There was a whole book written in Korea about silence as disagreement, silence as resistance. High school students don't like their own silence, but they have to show that they disagree with the system. Silence also has a positive, productive significance. It allows us to incubate thoughts before we speak. They said, yep, similar. So, a different set, you see a different set of silence as resistance, silence as preparation for increasing talk quality. Then I decided to conduct another project on Vietnamese students overseas to see if they would have the same response as the two groups that I did in the past. So I interviewed Vietnamese students who study in Australian university, and there I had a whole new set of findings that really blew me away. They said, silence is not to be blamed on teachers or anything. Silence is my choice. If I talk or if I keep silent, it's totally my decision. They're very, very confident in the way they behave. First time I heard this, silence, like the Korean project that allows me to see, identify the role of silence in enhancing the quality of talk. And then I learned something very exciting. Later on, I connect this with literature. I realized that silence and talk are not two opposite constructs, but you have something in the middle. Silence and talk as opposite are two extremes. The happy medium in between include different kinds of silence and different kinds of talk. I could identify from data. Just now I said, talking to yourself silently, no one can hear. That's private, inner speech, or inner talk, or self-talk. When you whisper to yourself, it's private speech or private talk. Or sometimes you whisper to the person next to you, like Dr. Fook and Dr. Singh has been whispering about each other's love life. Just kidding. Sorry, I'm too cheesy. Sorry.
Yes. You so bad out. You so bad
So
out.
that's insider speech. Only you two can share this story, but the rest can't be involved. It's insider speech. So along the continuum, silent and talk you have. Closer to talk is insider speech. In the middle you have private speech and then inner speech and then silent. They are not opposite anymore. You can unpack more behavior along the line. I thought that was really interesting. That allowed me to come up with a set of conclusions. But when I try to summarize all the findings I have together to tie them into a kind of common thread, I came up with this: silent and talk can be both positive and negative. If you like, it will be interesting, you give me examples. When is silent positive? And the other way around, like why talk? There may be talk that you enjoy, there may be talk that you hate. And the same thing applies to silent, but there may be there are examples here. Good talk, keep conversation going and we learn something new. Good silence, leave space for thinking, connecting, bonding, or leave space for others to share ideas with us. So both can be good, and both can be bad as well. Talk is only valuable when it makes sense, when you say something, not just speak. And silence is valuable when it is used productively to process information, to produce meaning. These are examples. I summarize from people examples. Sometimes talk or silence can be excessive, too much. You are silent too long, or you talk too much. I want you to shut up, or I want you to open your mouth. Too much talk dominates pastime, or too much silence impede learning. When nobody talks, we don't know what people think. We don't have materials to learn from. So this is a bit of a conclusion. More findings, putting together all the cases together. Actually, there was a case, a study that I did in the Philippines as well, but I did it on teacher silent, not student silent. But silent is not independent from talk. Silent is not the opposite to talk. Silent is part of talk. It's like music. Those who play music realize sometimes the song should be quiet down for us to enjoy the next part. For people who talk a lot, like myself or Mr. Fook, sometimes you like us more if we talk less. Between silent and talk, there is a shared significance. We use both to mediate, to prepare, to respond. One support the other. That's about it, but I will leave the floor open for comment and suggestion. But I would like to introduce this book because I'm going to give this to our library. This is the book that I wrote in 4 years. Started actually related to my PhD thesis, which I completed in 2002. And this book was published 2014. So it took me a decade to complete this. And the book is about what I presented to you, but a lot of explanation, a lot of story, a lot of connection with SLA that you can, because I put it in the context of SLA, how do we connect all of these findings with second language acquisition? What are the theories that speak to this, or rather the other way around. And then finally, I propose an approach, a pedagogical approach, with which I gave ideas for you and me to actually teach people who are both, or who are more prone to one or the other. So the book is called Understanding Silence and Reticence. I add reticence because reticence can be negative. Reticence means shyness or reluctance to speak. So understanding both, yeah. And there are how many chapters? 8 chapters. The first chapter is about silence in second language acquisition. So we understand, I explore, I just read a report of what people have said about silence in language education so far for half a century. Yeah. And then the last chapter is about indication of silence in pedagogy. There are examples of how people teach using the silent approach. And then there are 6 chapters about silence. Australian silence, Chinese silence. I talk about the background, the history of these, the silent history of silence in these cultures, and how silence is perceived in and out of these contexts. Plus, what people from these countries say about how they use silence, and the conclusion of where do we take it from there. For each chapter, there's the structure. So I have 6 chapters apart from SLI and pedagogy at the beginning, at the end. I have Australian silence, Chinese silence, Japanese silence, Korean silence, Filipino silence, and Vietnamese silence. I'm sorry I didn't present the one because I didn't look at students' work, I looked at teacher silence. Because when I went to Illinois, I discovered that teachers said they use silence a lot in their teaching. Not because they stop talking, but because there's a voice that goes at the same time with the public voice. When they speak out loud, it's a public voice, but there's always in the back of their head another voice guiding the public voice in teaching. And I find it so exciting. So that project changed. Because I know Filipino people are not very silent, different from East Asian, can be very social, can be very communicative. But the silent part in the Philippine culture comes from the other voice. So I think that may be just of interest to Hannah when you read it. I will leave this book in this library. I mean, Mr. Singh or Dr. Singh and Dr. Phương can help me transfer this to the library. I have another, this one for poetry for education. I'm sure some of us do poetry like Hannah or some of you.
Interesting.
Mr. is interested in poetry. So one way for me to keep diary, like when I travel, when I meet new people or interact with people like yourself, I have ideas. And I often record those ideas that we produce in a poem, in a short poem. And I keep for myself to begin with as hobby. But over the years, sometimes when I run out of teaching resources, I pull out from my diary some small poem and I use for teaching. And it works because my students like the thought and they want to interact. Then I invented activity for every poem that I wrote. I make some suggestions for how to use this poem in teaching. And finally, I put this book together. This book I don't write often, I don't write every day, every year, maybe 2 poems. But this is the whole life I write. I was very young until now. I have maybe I selected about 30 to 40 poems with activity I put together in this book published in the US last year. Small publisher as Libris, nothing fancy. But I would like you to have a peek at this book. I also draw pictures, like I do diary through poem and picture. And this is a picture of a small town in Japan when I travel. I have a notebook and sometimes I do the
You sketching?
So I put sketches.
Oh,
here.
really?
I put a lot of my sketches because
Yeah, he's
when I write
sketching.
poems and draw
Not
picture,
Google.
So I got a lot of
Talented.
picture
Yeah, he's very
and
talented.
theory, because you and I as academic, we don't just write something and then develop activity without explaining why we do that. So there's a lot of explanation when I use activities. I explain why I do that. I connect with the field, SLA, what kind of theory support. And over the year I share this with my colleagues. They use, a lot of them have used, and sometimes they work. Maybe I read one for you just for fun. At the end of the book, feel free to photocopy or use it any way you like. At the end I have a glossary with topics like love, despair, anger, learning, philosophy, culture. It's like a glossary, and there are page number. So one day you teach about relationship, then you look for relationship and look for the page number and go to the where it is. You have a poem. Some of the poem, I have to admit that was not really written by me, but collectively written with my students. I read one to you. Suppose, and it can be used for teaching language and ideas at the same time, grammar. Conditional sentences, if. So I read one related to if, and the content is relationship. Yeah. If kisses were petals, I would send you flowers. If hugs were seconds, I would send you hours. If smiles were water, I would send you the sea. If love was a person, I would send you me. So there are poems like this. The thing about these